NCAA Pick'em Boys 2024 Week 13. Guess what? I forgot there was a 14th week. The usual. That's how it goes. I'm a gambling man, not a college football sports fan. I'm a gambling man, so I do whatever it takes in the moment. I run it every week, every day. Besides the point, picks are due Saturday, November 23rd at 11 a.m. Central. Remember that. First game Thursday, November 21st at 6:30 p.m. If you want them picks, get them in. All right, let me tell you, the recap of Week 12 is going to be fast. It's going to be fast and it's going to be furious. 2 in the positive. John Nartz, I believe, and
Nortz.
Kyle Nartz. I'm gonna call him Nartz. John Nartz, and Kyle B. 2 in the positive. Congratulations to y'all. You guys are the only 2 that went positive, and everybody else sucks. We're just gonna go with that. We all suck. That is. I would argue that was a terrible slate for a 12th week, but that's just me. Overall standings, we got Steven still at the top, 34 and 21. Brandon following behind him, 33 and 32. Boy, I'm all over the place. 33 and... Blah!
Numbers are hard, Gavin.
I know it. 33 and 22. Tommy, Matthew, Cody. 32, 23, 31, and 24 through and through. Y'all guys can read it. You understand it. I am all discombobulated today, but we're going to talk about a couple of games that have upset a lot of people. We're going to talk about the biggest, I would argue, the biggest upset of the week. Ranked 22 LSU at Florida. 27 and 16. Florida taking the win. LSU projected to win by 4.5, did not win the game. Obviously, that means they did not cover. Florida getting a great game for themselves. Next on the list, which could add to the whole conversation of fraud teams, we got ranked number 1 Oregon at Wisconsin, winning 16-13. Oregon projected to win by 13.5 by 2 touchdowns. And they only win by 3 points. So there's a lot of conversation there that I'm sure we're going to get into. And last but not least, finally, and I said this on the last pod, dethroned. BYU has been dethroned. 17-13. BYU projected to win by 3.5. They lost 17-13. So they are no longer in the running for now. We'll see what happens. But hey, we got to get into our people, the boys that are on the top, the boys that give this show the little shine that it needs. The NCAA expert, the man, the myth, the legend, Jerry Stovall, the usual man that has been here for years. And we got our specialty that is not special, Peter Goulandry. We got the boys. We're here today. Boys, what's up? Any opinions other than my discombobulated words?
Oh, yeah. First opinion. Glad to be back. You know, the show where it's supposed to be. Get that trash from last week. Hosts out of here. Shout out Christian Cordwelgi. Steven, you can come back. Also, shout out John Nortz. I told him to give a shout out for calling that Wisconsin Oregon game. Props. Wisconsin really dropped the ball at the end. But yeah, I think last week showed just how so many of these teams in the top 10 are just frauds, and how the committee is showing us this year that it doesn't matter who you play. If you go to a school they like, you're going to be in the top 10.
Air fried Twinkies are better than regular Twinkies.
Yeah, hold on. Before we get into everything, can we dive into that a little bit? What indulged this idea of yours?
So my parents were watching the girls when we went to Florida, and my dad is just a random individual. Found a box of Twinkies at Costco or wherever, and now we have a massive Econo-sized box of Twinkies. And the greatest appliance ever created by man is the air fryer. And so far, everything we put in that air fryer comes out better. So why not put a Twinkie in an air fryer? Sure enough, it's the bee's knees. Like the bee's knees that has been drowned in tits and just coated in like powdered sugar. It's amazing.
I mean, I know deep fried Twinkies, they're battered before they're deep fried. But if we're
It makes you feel
talking,
like it's a little bit healthier.
yeah, I'm willing to give that a go. I'm an
Do
air
it.
fryer, sucker. I air fryer everything that I can. Everything is going in the air fryer if I get the chance. But a Twinkie, haven't tried that. I'm
Just get ready
curious.
for the even more of a chemical taste to it. Like because Twinkies already have a chemical taste. They can withstand nuclear holocaust. I think this says this is good by December. Oh, actually, this must be like a box from 5 years ago because it says good by December of 2024. But nuclear holocaust food there. Gonna have a little bit of a chemical taste, but yeah, nice little crispy Twinkie. It's perfect.
I don't mind that one bit. I love that. Anybody have any thoughts on last week's games, performance,
No,
anything?
everything just sucks.
I do agree. This
Yep.
was a great week of upsets. I think I was at a reception with my father-in-law, which means we're watching an A&M game through and through, regardless whether we're playing New Mexico State or not. We did not win out like we should have. We won, yeah, great, but we should have blown the team out to give us a better look. But there's a lot. I mean, it's the Texas game that makes a difference for us into the playoffs. Like the last week's game, this week games probably doesn't mean that much. Uh, but the top 25 has been very interesting for the most part. But we could get in that later. Any other thoughts this past week?
Now let's just get this show on the road.
Let's get the show on the road. Mortal Locks, guys. Me and Jerry holding it together. 7-5. That's how we do it. Peter, since he missed, I guess he's 5-6-1. Since he didn't have a pick,
I would assume 6-6.
Consider it a bye week.
he didn't have one single pick, so that means he's at neutral. I would have marked it negative. You're welcome. But you're so far behind that I don't think you'll catch up anyways.
With how many weeks remaining, Gavin?
One more week after this, sir.
So I could catch up.
Very good.
Yeah, it's
And then does the 2 weeks, like this week and next week, is that championship week is the week after, right?
Correct.
yeah.
So then we have 3 weeks left, so I could pull ahead.
We only do regular seasons, so
Pussy.
we didn't plan for this, so we're not doing it.
Some host you are, Gavin.
Yeah, right. Okay, we're gonna get into these games. Besides these two lunatics up here, we're gonna talk about the biggest game of the week. Joking. Charleston Southern
There you go.
at Florida State. Neither are ranked. Florida State at home projected to win by 33.5. That's a big number. Jerry, what you got?
Yeah, so I was just trying to make these last couple weeks as intriguing as possible. And what better way than to have two bottom feeder teams, both 1-9 in their overall schedule or their overall schedule. And I did some research. I didn't dive into the nitty gritty details. I just kept it total offense versus total defense. Gentlemen, I'm surprised. Charleston Southern has at the FCS level a top 50 defense, but their offense is 117th. But do you know how bad Florida State's offense and defense are? Florida State's offense ranks 132nd out of 133 teams. And then their defense is 97th. So I mean, other than having the FBS like players, Charleston Southern, as far as like statistics go, like total offense, total defense, is a better team than Florida State. As crazy as that sounds. And I mean, I had to go into the actual Charleston Southern page to see who they've played. They did beat the ranked 15th Furman 24-20, so top 25 win. But then everything else has been a loss. They lost to Southeast Missouri State, Tennessee Tech, Gardner Webb, UT Martin, Eastern Illinois, overtime. Shut up. With that being said, I like Charleston Southern not to win, but to cover the spread of 33.5 points. That is just a ludicrous amount of points for a spread. That there's too much. That's too much for Florida State. Shut up. Excuse me.
Well, I agree 100%. Charleston Southern. Yeah, you could say that Florida State in the in conference and whatever you could say is like, hey, they're held at a better at a higher totem pole than everybody else. But 33 is way too big of a number based on how Florida State's been doing. They haven't blown out a team yet. They've lost a lot of games over and over and over again. I just don't think that 33 and a half is a good enough number for Florida State. I would take Charleston Southern every day of the week. I'll put it on my gambling card. I will put some money on it because I just do not think that Florida State has 33 and a half in them at all based on how they're playing.
Shoot, the highest amount of points that Florida State has scored this season is 21. They can't even score 33 points.
Yeah, if they can't come up with that right now, they're not going to come up with it in this game. So, I mean, it seems clear as day. Charleston Southern is the move. Sure, they'll win by a touch. I mean, Florida State will win by a touchdown, maybe a touchdown, a field goal, maybe 2 touchdowns, but they're not winning by 33, not 33 and a half. It's just not happening. Peter, what's up?
Yeah, I think Charleston Southern they're going to walk into Bobby Bowden Field and they're going to hear the Indian calls of, the good old Seminoles. And I think they're going to do what our forefathers did and just send them on the Trail of Tears. Send them. I'm picking Charleston Southern to cover, if not win. I think it's going to be a 1-score game with Charleston Southern potentially kicking the last-second field goal.
Gavin, you're going to have to beep out a lot of that right there. Referencing the Trail of Tears. Good Lord.
Demonetized. Just like that. One swift sentence. Yeah, so I guess we all agree that Charleston Southern is the move. I do think that's one of the, if I had to take like a top 3 best bets of the week, that would be one of them. I do my research on Thursdays, so everybody give me a break. But we're going to talk about the next game. I think this week is a week filled full of upsets. We have like Oklahoma could upset Texas yet again. Possibility. We have other games. For example, what we're about to talk about is Army at Notre Dame. Okay, spread.
Wait, timeout. You're saying Oklahoma can upset Texas again?
Oh, yeah.
They're playing Alabama. Well, first off, Oklahoma is playing Alabama. Oklahoma's also played Texas weeks ago.
Yep. That Alabama Oklahoma was exactly what I was talking about. Yes.
Either do you have Claire's number? We may need to check to see if Gavin had a stroke or something.
Yeah.
I'm hitting the healthy heartbeat right now. But you're right. You're 100%. Alabama, Oklahoma. That's what I was talking about. I think this week's slate is filled full of minute possibilities of upsets here and there that can throw chaos in the entire order of these rankings. Besides
So
the
even
point,
Texas
yes.
playing Kentucky, so that could be like Kentucky's played some of these teams pretty tight. Anyway,
Yeah,
That's a false
see,
statement.
get
look,
distracted.
opportunities for anything. Okay, Army at Notre Dame. Army ranked 18 at home, ranked 6. Notre Dame. Notre Dame projected to win by a whopping 14.5. Peter, give me your take.
Yeah, if this was 33.5, I would still take Notre Dame. Fun fact is actually at a neutral site. They're playing at Yankee Stadium, which means the Army will absolutely get destroyed. Army's a military school. The military schools are not good. They've never been good. Just to put in perspective, we all thought Navy was good. And then Notre Dame bent them over, and Navy's never been good since. Army's going to be the similar thing. They're going to come in feeling great on their 10-0 playing nobodies and get bent over by a little Irishman on the East Coast where they came into our country and just send them packing. 14.5 is way too small. Army's not good. They're not a good scoring team. Just like every military school, they'll probably run a triple option or some archaic thing that worked in the 1950s. Bunch of white dudes, and it's just not going to go well.
Jerry, thoughts?
I'm thinking Peter's been drinking something strong, and that's just straight up vodka with all the the hate going on tonight. I mean, I personally am not going to pick this game, even though it seems like Notre Dame should be the obvious pick with this. It's really hard to tell because if you look into the nitty gritty details of it, it's almost a 50-50 split between offense versus defensive comparison, slight nod towards Army when it comes to like the allowing the rushing yards. But Notre Dame does have the upper advantage when it comes to passing yards. Where it stands out to me, though, is that Army's defense is no joke this year. They're ranked fairly high in almost every statistics with it, of like scoring, interceptions, and even playing pretty clean ball with the penalties with it. Um, I mean, I would love to see Army win this game. Maybe I don't know if it's going to be 14 and a half, but Peter is right. I mean, we thought that Navy was going to be a fantastic close matchup, and they just made Navy look quite silly. Now, the not for Army is that it's a completely different offensive scheme and one that is less turnover prone, which is what Navy had a problem with during or against Notre Dame. So I see Army having time of possession, rushing the ball really well. I do see Notre Dame winning, but I don't know by 14 and a half.
So I would agree with Jerry that I just don't think that Notre Dame could pull off 14.5. I mean, that's such a high number. Army doing great. Offense is stellar. Everything's looking fluid. Notre Dame is one of those questionable, like, hey, are they as good as people are claiming? I think they're one of the last few frauds left in the top 10 right now. They've skated with a lot of easy wins. I think Georgia Tech win would be like notable at this point. because Georgia Tech is known for like dethroning a couple of covering teams, not winning, but covering teams. Georgia Tech knows how to cover. Um, I just I'd like to think that the momentum of Army will keep them plowing through to cover the 14 and a half. I will not say that they will win the game. I don't think that they have that potential, but I don't think that Notre Dame has the potential of covering 14 and a half. That seems way too big of a number. If this game was closer to like, man, 10 and a half, I might be more interested in picking Notre Dame, but I'm honestly going to have to take Army to cover 14 and a half. Give me Army in the points. Peter, what you got?
So one last thing, or two last things. One, Notre Dame has shown us they're a covering team this year. 8-2, one being an upset, and one time they didn't cover is by 1 point or 2 points. So like, and that was a spread of 27. So like, whatever. Little history between these two teams. So this goes back a bit. Last time they played is 2016, then there's 2010, and then 2006. Army has yet to score double digits. And Notre Dame has yet to score.
Big asterisk though. Like Army was the Kennesaw State for the entire 2000s until this last season, or until this
My
season.
thing though, the military schools are just not known for staying in these good football games. Like they're known for playing each other, being well disciplined, and it's just like when you put them against these like actually D1 schools, they just don't compete. And the other thing too is Army's last game, they barely won 14-3 against Northern Texas. And so it's just like, to me, I don't know why Army's ranked. They play no one, and they in the last couple times it hasn't been a great showing. So yeah. I think their only chance would be if it was at Army, but it's at Yankee Stadium, which will essentially play into Notre Dame.
So the last thought for me is obviously you have to go back and look at Notre Dame's lone loss being NIU. Granted, it is at the beginning of the season, so a lot has changed since then. But if you're looking at their numbers, they were a pretty balanced team. I mean, they ran the ball for 190 yards, passed the ball for 198. Nothing too sexy, but you still have to think Army's big thing is rushing. So as the season has progressed, you see that NIU is ranked 13th in the nation in rushing offense, with Army being no surprise number one, averaging 6.2 yards per rush. And Notre Dame's rushing defense comes in at 43rd, allowing 3.5 yards per rush. So it's going to be a close game. I think Peter may just be drinking a little too much vodka to think that Notre Dame will cover more than 14 and a half. It's just, I don't know. I'm not going to put this on my card. I think this is too much of too many question marks with it.
I have no problem admitting that Notre Dame could win this game. I just think that it's an anomaly of a year where you don't catch Army 10-0 ever. Especially now in the season where it's like, all right, maybe you got to give Army a little bit of benefit of the doubt that like they've made it where they are, because teams that needed to be exposed have already been exposed, and Army's yet to have that. Now, I will say that Army's real top tier competition is fixing to be Notre Dame, but with all the games that they're playing, getting the momentum, the fluidity of their offense, it's like, all right, I think that they could hold their own against Notre Dame, certainly not win. Not at all. I do not have them projecting to win, but I do have Notre Dame winning by 7.5 to 10 points, which gives me the spread of Army at 14.5. Seems like a great number. I would jump on it if it was 14, 13.5, 13. I would still jump on it. I think that's a great number. Peter, any counter arguments?
I just think it'll be at least 21 point spread between the two. I think it's going to be 3 touchdowns, and I think it's going to get ugly quick, just personally.
Would y'all all agree that the over under of 44.5, y'all would take the over?
Yeah,
I would take the over.
100%.
100%, without a doubt. That would be my main bet on that
I'm not surprised
game.
at how low it is. You think it'd be like 54.5?
My guess is because Army runs so much would be my guess.
Yeah.
I mean, but even with that, they're averaging about 35 or 37 points for the season. Like they have 1, 2, 3, 4 games with 40 plus points scored on their side alone. They scored 37 against Rice. I mean, it's a point scoring machine.
Yeah, if both sides are reaching over 30 points per game, like on average, it's like, okay, you should see this thing at 55 to 60 easily. Maybe Vegas knows some, we don't, but I think like if I had to take a best bet on this game, it would be over 44.5. I wouldn't touch the spread. I would take 44.5 all day long. But yeah, you're 100% right, Jerry. I think the over under is understated. I think it should be sitting around like 48.5, maybe 49. But
real quick, I'm sorry, I just saw this. Peter, who is Notre Dame's starting quarterback and starting running back?
Ooh, I don't know off the top of my head.
yeah,
Because I'm seeing, according to November 16th injury report, you have quarterback with the last name of Carr for Notre Dame injured or questionable with an elbow injury as of November 16th.
Didn't they have somebody like the last name Leonard?
No,
Riley Leonard. He was a starting QB this year. Was Leonard?
Oh, so he's a starter. Okay, gotcha.
He came from Duke last year.
Wait, so wait, so the starting QB's out.
No. Carr, they list Carr as being out for the game or questionable, as well as a running back with the last name of Ford as of November 16th. But Peter said it's Riley Leonard is their starting quarterback.
So okay, so has Notre Dame tried switching out quarterbacks?
I don't know if Leonard got hurt for a game, but no, he's been the guy.
Yeah, because I just thought Leonard was the guy through and through. But if they have an injury,
yeah, I mean, it's not often that you see a quarterback injury be up there, except for like a starting quarterback. But yeah, going all the way back to the A&M game, Riley Leonard was indeed the starting quarterback. So there must have been like a second string or a third string quarterback that got injured during practice.
Yeah. And even the running back, that's not their starting running back either. So
yeah. Okay, never mind. I'll redact my question.
Okay, fair enough. Well, there you go. That was the second game that we talked about. We're going to talk about the third game. I would argue biggest game of the week because we get to figure out if someone in the top 10 is a legitimate fraud or not. We're going to talk about number 5, Indiana, at ranked 2, Ohio State. Ohio State projected to win by 12.5. Now, this is going to be my mortal lock. I personally really don't want to touch this game, but this is the biggest game of the week, and we have to talk about it. So I want to take this one under my wing. This is the week that we figure out if Indiana has been a fraud all this time, or if Indiana could hold their own in the top 10 against a very aggressive Ohio State offensive wise. 12.5 seems like a lot of points, but when you look at Indiana and Ohio State, when Ohio State doesn't have the competition, they're blowing teams out. When there's a little bit of pressure, they don't cover. Okay? So hear me out on that. When there's expected to be a blowout, Ohio State comes through with the punches. Now, when there's a game that should be a little bit closer than expected, even a little bit, whether that be 16 and a half to 15 and a half points, whatever it is, when it's something that tight, they tend not to cover like they want to. Indiana has been pulling through and through. 9-1. 10-0 against the spread is 8-2. They're covering everything in sight. So if they're going to lose to this game, which I'm not going to claim who's going to win or lose, but if they're going to lose to this game, they're not going to lose by 12 and a half. So give me Indiana and the points plus 12 and a half cover. Whether they win or lose, I think that they could cover the 12 and a half. Jerry, give me your feelings.
I mean, I like Indiana this year. Signetti has done a phenomenal job. He deserves every single penny of his raise. He's catapulted himself through the FCS level to the FBS level. And it wouldn't shock me if an SEC team picks him up quite quickly, because I think coach at the SEC is every head coach's dream. But
you mean LSU?
No. Maybe Florida, maybe Kentucky. But I'm looking at these numbers, and it's not looking good for Indiana when you match them up against Ohio State. Almost every statistical category, regardless of Indiana's offense going against Ohio State's defense or vice versa, it's heavily favored in Ohio State's favor. With this also being a game at the Horseshoe, I mean, I like Ohio State to win it. But, I mean, I think you're right with Indiana against the spread. They are a good spread covering team. I think they'll keep it close, but I think this is where we will see Indiana get their first loss. I'm hoping not, but I think that's the case.
Peter, any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I've been going back and forth. I've been thinking about this game actually a lot this weekend. I would agree with you, Gavin, that my pick is that Indiana's going to cover. Bare minimum, they're going to cover. Now, what I keep going back and forth with is I think this game is going to go one of two ways. I think it's either going to be Indiana wins a real close game, like one score or less, maybe last second field goal, who knows, but one score or less, or Ohio State blows them out of the water. I think it's going to be a momentum thing where it's like if Indiana is hanging around, I think that Ohio State starts feeling the pressure a lot more, because I think the Nebraska game comes in the back of their mind. And just other games where they almost lost and they snuck out. But it's like Indiana has shown, like when they're playing teams, they don't have the strongest schedule, but they take care of business. Besides, like last week was Michigan, not a great win, only won by 5. But besides that, they've just been taking like no and ifs or doubts or but about it. Like Indiana's like shown they're much better, and it's that Nebraska one that really piques my interest. Of like Ohio State really should have lost that game. They barely snuck out. The most overrated quarterback, Raiola, just choked it away in that game. But then you see Indiana beat them 56-7, and I sit there and I'm like, that's impressive. So to me, I think Indiana's going to win this game outright, but I think at the bare minimum, they're going to cover.
I was going to say that Indiana makes me think of what Missouri could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Where like Missouri should have been, could have been, take the argument as you will, but like should have been in this spot. But Indiana is playing like Missouri should have been playing this entire time, where it's like, okay, these guys have the potential. And then Indiana was the team that was like, yo, we could show you that we are the potential. And Missouri was the team that couldn't. But it reminds me a lot of Missouri at the beginning of the season, where it was like, all right, does a little competition hurt you or does it not? And as we know, this season, it's been a season of upsets. So, like, we could be completely wrong, especially on this game specifically. If I knew the schedule and the season so far, if I knew any better, I would say that Indiana would keep this game to like a field goal to like keep the upsets running, because I can't think of another game this week. I can think of a few. Never mind. I say that, but like I can think of a few that could come up with upsets, but I feel like Indiana's in the perfect spot to do something ridiculous based on how they're playing. I could be wrong, but we're gonna move past this game. And before we get into the top 25, I just want to talk real quick. Something lighthearted, something to get everybody happy. Should Brian Kelly be fired?
I have to feel this question every single week, now twice a week for like the last month and a half.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Yes. Get him out.
I'm not even gonna entertain.
No, you know exactly
more.
what caliber LSU should be at, and they're not anywhere close to that.
You're absolutely correct. We know the caliber of where they're supposed to be.
Yes, but LSU doesn't come out from something this low.
I literally took this picture. This is beautiful. Just where Brian Kelly should be, looking down, knowing he's getting fired.
He knows LSU should be playing way better than they are right now, and that almost gives the exact reason why Brian Kelly should be fired. Is that LSU should be playing all of these teams way closer. They should be in the playoffs. They should be statistically.
No, you're absolutely right. This team on paper, preseason wise, was one of the best teams in all of college football.
So what the hell happened?
Great question. I mean, you can always say on paper they look great. Brian Kelly had to do a completely brand new overhaul of his defensive coaches. So it's basically like a brand new coach from year one. You can do that as much as you want. It doesn't matter. The other aspect of it is there's been an interesting kind of rumbling going on about the players maybe overthinking about it, especially with the helmet audio in it now. There's speculation that the defensive backs weren't getting information because the defensive side of the ball was chirping a little too much, that Garrett Nussmeier is overdoing stuff because he looked great at the beginning of the season, but now I guess the pressure of not having or knowing that you don't have a rushing offense week in and week out is a problem. But the one that I saw and had to share with my buddies after the Florida game is the shots of Brian Kelly that we had on the sidelines. Peter, I'm sure you saw a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But there was one player in particular that he kept getting on, which was Chris Hilton. And someone was able to read his lips, and it was something along the lines of, why do you keep jumping? I told you to keep your feet on the ground. You're just uneffing coachable or something like this. And the guy went through almost every single play that Chris Hilton was in. And for some reason, he's like a jackrabbit where he has to jump all the time. It makes no sense. And not only does he have to jump, but he's jumping way too early. Like he's not even getting close to the ball. So it could be the fact that he just has, like, where on paper they look great, but in reality, we just have players that aren't able to execute properly. And I don't know how you can coach that. Like, how do you coach a player to be more coachable?
Now, I do agree. I'll give my quick thing real quick, is that Brian Kelly is actually doing his job. I think he has a team that's not quite ready to be at the level that they need to be. I actually do give my respect to Brian Kelly. I think he's doing a great job given the circumstances. So I do agree with you with that. Like, like how are you going to coach a team like this right now? But that's just this year. My opinion could completely change by next year. But right now,
100%.
I'm gonna give Brian Kelly the benefit of the doubt right now. That it's just one of those years that we kind of have to get our shit together and then come out with something great. Peter, you got to take on that?
Oh yeah. Real quick, first question. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this his third year coaching? This was like finishing his third year?
Second,
This
right?
is finishing his third year at LSU.
Okay. So at this point, I think he has had his time and he needs to like LSU needs to burn the bridge, fire him, get him out. Reason being, couple things. By year 3, it's your recruits. It's your players you're bringing in. It's so from start to finish, he watched them in high school, he brought them here. So he's had multiple years to vet these guys, make sure they're coachable, make sure they're going to fit into a system.
Well, let me counter that recruiting part of it, if I may. You have a recruiting coordinator. He's the one that's supposed to evaluate and say, this is the player that we need to go after. Yes, the head coach still needs to have the final say with it, but you rely on a team of recruiters led by the head recruiting coordinator. And it's ultimately like, yes, this is the person we have to go after. And the recruiter that he got or brought with him from Notre Dame, terrible recruiter. The one that he picked up as of last year, as well as the addition of Corey Raymond, which Frank Wilson and Corey Raymond worked amazingly well under Les Miles. And they recruited the likes of like Leonard Fournette, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry. I even think Tyrann Mathieu was in that recruiting pool with him. So yes, I agree. It is his crop of players, but it's only year 2 with a new head recruiting coordinator that has a proven track record in the state of Louisiana.
I'll still say though, the buck stops with him. Or like he still brought that first guy with him,
Right?
Like
right.
what I think when I
Right.
think of Brian Kelly, I think he's a great politician. He sounds good. He says the right things, but when it comes to actually getting stuff done, he doesn't do it. Like Notre Dame, he never won anything. Look at all of his bowl wins. Tell you how many there are. Maybe one. Maybe. There's a reason why the biggest like mark against Notre Dame, which there's no defense. As a Notre Dame fan, there's nothing I can say when they say, "Well, how many bowl wins have you won in the last 10 bowls?" And I can say 0 because we haven't done shit because of Brian Kelly.
Now, you could also make an argument that that's because of Notre Dame being in a god awful state in a god awful region of the state, having ridiculous recruiting expectations academically. I mean, to try to get a player with academics to go up there and play ball, look at Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
They're in a sexy state, sexy city, academics comparable, but they can't even recruit players.
Thing with Notre Dame is they take out all those academic things for their football players.
But they don't.
They do. I've had friends on their staff. Trust me, they take them all out. It's like if you're good at football, they'll say, "Oh, come on in. You can sit here and you're going through." The thing with Brian Kelly is it's just excuses. Oh, it's this coach's fault. Oh, the players are doing this. Well, that's your job as a coach is to make them coachable, to make them listen. If they're not prepared, why are they playing? And if you don't have someone to back them up, that's on you. Like he's getting paid millions to coach, and he's just blaming everybody but himself. And I think LSU expects a lot more. And I think his time's done. And I agree. I think he should go back to maybe high school football and learn how to coach those kids, and then maybe he can work his way back up. But I think Brian Kelly has shown he's the biggest fraud that a program can get.
Peter, hold up that glass you had earlier tonight. Where was it filled up at? So that's
water.
where it started. Water. Going to coach at the high school level. Come on. Even Jim McElwain didn't even do that.
I would say Brian Kelly is worthy of being a head coach. I
But
I'm
where? Not
literally
D1.
yeah, I'm giving Brian Kelly one more year because based on how I see LSU playing right now and just offense and defense just not working together. Like
That's his
you,
fault. That's his fault. That's his job. They're not working together because he's not doing his job. Like we always say, one more year for Brian Kelly. We did Notre Dame for 10 years. And every year was just more like, oh, regular season, we're looking good. On paper, we're looking great. We get to a big game, like clockwork, he buckles. It's like just this year for LSU, every somewhat big game buckles.
I
Any
mean, I'm looking
pressure?
at his season by season breakdown. The first season with Notre Dame, they go 8-5, win the Sun Bowl. Third season, they go 12-1, lose to Alabama in the BCS national championship game. I believe that's an Alabama year in 2012.
Yeah,
Wins
blown
the
out like
Pinstripe
40
Bowl,
points.
wins Music City Bowl, loses the Fiesta Bowl in 2015 after going a 10-3 season. Wins Citrus Bowl, loses Cotton Bowl in 2018, wins Camping Bowl. I mean,
The
his
Meta
overall
Bulls.
record at Notre Dame is 113-40. He won
Yeah.
nearly 75% of the games. That's
But the
not
cupcake
something.
games.
I mean, but
I'm
that's
a
Notre
Notre Dame
Dame
fan.
though. That's
We're
Notre Dame being
cupcake.
an independent.
Right, but I'm saying is like he really should be like 15 losses with the schedule they have. If you're a good Notre Dame coach, you should be at like for that span, 15 to 20 losses max. And like every bowl game that he won, I couldn't even tell you where they played it at. They made it up. Camping World, like every time it was a major bowl, like the championship versus Bama. If I'm not mistaken, we lost by 30 points or more. But it's like, again, Brian Kelly looks great on paper. He can sell himself. He can get the big contract. When it comes to hoisting actual hardware, he's not your guy. He might get you the game because he can sell his own team and his own skills. But when something falls short, he blames on someone else. Just like the USC game, pounding the table saying, we keep messing up. Not taking accountability, but saying we keep choking. The guys keep choking, this, and that. He's not a good coach. He's a
What
good
about Lou
politician.
Holtz?
He brought actual hardware.
Did he though? I'm looking at his thing here. I mean, yeah, he has a Fiesta Bowl, Orange Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Cotton Bowl. I'm not seeing, unless those are national championships that I just don't see on this sportsreference.com. But he has one less year, has 13 less losses or less wins, and has a total of 30 losses compared to Brian Kelly's 40 and with more games played.
I'm pretty sure the Cotton Bowl and Sugar Bowl back then, even if they weren't the championship, I know they were like top tier bowls. So I do know back then.
Didn't produce much more though. Has about 3 percentage points better win percentage. But Lou Holtz is like pegged as one of the best Notre Dame coaches to ever walk the land and do touchdown Jesus with his weird lisp.
I think if we're looking at LSU this year, like them beating Ole Miss, which was a great feat, especially if we're looking at how Ole Miss is playing right now, even South Carolina, how they're playing right now, and LSU could get on top of that. I think that LSU could find themselves in the right direction, but I don't think they're not going to find it this year, without a doubt. I think, and I could be wrong, man. This is just me speculating that, like, give them next season, they'll be completely different. But they got a lot of shit that they have to hash out before they can start competing at a higher level. But they have proven this year that they could compete at a higher level. They're just not consistent.
Here's a question for Peter. I'll end it on this. You have, like, you're the athletic director at LSU. You have Brian Kelly, which his contract is one of the top contracts in all of college football. You're paying the Cajun Coach O his contract because you had to buy him out after extending it. And yeah, this isn't a great season. You're not going to, the 10-win season is off the table, but year one, 10 wins, goes to the SEC championship game. Year 2, 10-win season, you get a Heisman. Third season, you're still bowl eligible, still up for 9 wins. I mean, does having a down season this year merit paying another coach after you fire him?
To answer, I answer in two parts. One depends on the coach. Like, who would you bring in? Because I think that changes things. Like, this will never happen, but like, say some of the caliber of like how Belichick is in the NFL. If someone's like that, the college equivalent to him, it's like, oh yeah, I'm bringing him in. Because as an athletic director, and I sit there and I go, oh, like there's a Heisman here. Like the first two years are really good. Well, I honestly attribute half of that to what Coach O did because he built the reputation, he built the attractiveness of LSU, which drew these high talented players. And because it's like there is some handoff there, just like how Sarkisian at Texas gets all the credit. Whoever the head coach was before him really did the heavy lifting. Sarkisian walked into a good situation. We're similar
Did he
to
though?
yeah, like
Tom
Texas
Herman
was
did Jack Squad. Charlie Strong
he
did Jack Squad. The last good coach at Texas was Mac Brown, but we're not talking about that. You would have
yeah.
to go back all the way to Nick Saban in
Right.
the early 2000s for LSU. That's what made LSU sexy, and that's what made the high standard at LSU the way that it is now.
But I
Because
would
I can
say
tell you, it was garbage before Nick Saban.
oh, yeah. And it's just like, well, but when I think of like how LSU being attractive, I think of Coach O and Joe Burrow. I think that, and like obviously one of the best teams of college football we've seen in a long, long time, and probably will for a long time. But it's like I think Jaden Daniels, all those guys saw that team, saw the swagger they had, how Coach O would talk in press conferences and other stuff, and it's like the whole Coach O thing didn't end well. I get that, but it's like he had this charisma that just fit LSU. And it's just like if I was a kid, it's like I personally don't like LSU. I don't. But it's like watching Coach O and that team made me think, wow, that'd actually be a fun place to go. And it's like if they can convince me to do that, it's just like I know these other players that are already thinking of it are all in. And that gives Brian Kelly an easy starting point. But now that it's people looking at LSU under Brian Kelly's leadership, it's like, well, is this as attractive? Like when I see him yelling at players saying "be fucking coachable" and all this other stuff, it's just like if I was a player, especially in the NIL era, if I was that wide receiver, I'd have been like, "Sweet, I'll go get 20 million somewhere else. See you, coach." Like I would just walk off, and that's the for better or worse, that's the era we're in. You see a coach talking to players like that,
Well, what about recruits like Bryce Underwood, recruits like Harlem Berry, recruits like Derek Meadows? Like, I mean, we all know Bryce Underwood. He's already a home name over in Michigan, number one nationally ranked player. You have Dave Portnoy and the Michigan NIL saying we will guarantee you what was it, $10.7 million
Yeah,
something up
something
there.
like
Yeah.
For 3 or
that.
4
Yeah,
years?
10 mil.
And he comes out and says, "Doesn't matter. I'm still going to LSU because I'm looking at the NFL money, not NIL money." And that's not Coach O. That is because I mean, even look at it. Jaden Daniels is a product of Brian Kelly. He had got that transfer in. He was able to develop that player, and he was able to get the Heisman in year 2. That wasn't a Coach O kid. And Bryce Underwood and like the number one defensive back, number one running back, they're wanting to come play for Brian Kelly because they know what he's able to produce with it. It's hard. Like, I mean, we could
Yeah.
go, I could go on for hours with this topic. I need to go to bed because I have a trip in the morning, but I will say, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, Brian Kelly is good about cutting ties with things that aren't working. Look at all
Yeah.
of the coaching staff last year after year 2, and we'll probably see an offensive coordinator change if I had to guess after this season. I mean, Joe Sloan is a fantastic quarterbacks coach, but I don't know if he's cut out for a solo offensive coordinator. So I wouldn't it wouldn't shock me to see if we have a new OC after this season. But that's what I respect about the guy. He's not afraid to be like, this isn't working. We got to go in a different direction.
As long as there's no backlash on him. As soon as there's backlash on him, he doesn't do it. He
Yeah.
doesn't touch it because he's like, "Ooh, this is a mark against my reputation. I can't. We'll put it on someone else for now." He was a problem. Cut him out. Like,
It's a fair point. That's a fair point. Good argument. Great argument, both people. I'm kind of down the middle with this LSU coaching staff right now. But that is good enough for today. Boys, I appreciate you, Peter and Jerry, as usual. Reminder, picks are due Saturday, November 23rd at 11 a.m. Central Time. First game, Thursday, November 21st, 6:30. Get that in time if you want them. And once again, thanks again. Week 13. Let's have a week. Let's have a good week. Let's all go positive. And once again, happy picking.